Apple just announced their new virtual reality headset, and I have some opinions on it. So last night at WWDC, Apple's developer conference, they unveiled their first foray into the world of virtual/mixed reality. It's called the Apple Vision Pro, and oh my goodness, do I think this is going to shake up the industry. And I have a lot of opinions to share on it. Now, if you're a returning viewer to this channel, you're probably wondering, Pete, aren't you a psychology YouTuber? Why the heck are you talking about technology and virtual reality? Stay in your lane. And to that I say, no. And the reason I say that is because outside of this YouTube channel, I am surprisingly well known for my opinions on virtual reality. While working at my old job at Ogilvy, I wrote a piece of thought leadership about how virtual reality, behavioral science, and marketing all interact with each other. And off the back of producing that piece of thought leadership, I've been invited to several pretty high-profile events where I'm advocating for virtual reality and the Metaverse and its place within the world of marketing and business. I've spoken at conferences that have been streamed to tens of thousands of people around the world talking about this topic of virtual reality and the Metaverse. And I was even invited to this event in the Houses of Parliament. That's me, and this is a guy called Lord Black, one of the members of the House of Lords. And there I am talking to him about virtual reality and the Metaverse and why I think this is seriously going to shake up the world of business and commerce. So all of that is just to say that me making a video about a virtual reality headset isn't completely unfounded. I am surprisingly well known for my opinions on virtual reality outside of this, so here we are talking about Apple's new Virtual Reality Pro. So what do I think about this new headset? Well, in my opinion, I think that Apple almost got everything perfect with this device. And by the way, in this video, I'm not going to be covering any of the specs of the device. If you're interested in the specs, go and watch a tech YouTuber because they'll be talking to you about the number of pixels in the screen and so on and so forth.
23 million pixels? What?
I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about Apple's statement that they made from this video, where they clearly lay out their philosophy to virtual reality in this space. And this video is going to be me giving my opinion on whether I think that their move as a business is the right one when it comes to virtual reality. So the first thing that stood out to me about Apple's announcement was that the focus was heavily steered away from the world of gaming, something which Meta historically has leaned into very heavily with their virtual reality headsets. Instead, they focused on two main aspects of using this device. The first was watching content and the second was productivity. So let's talk about each of those individually and why I think moving away from gaming was a good move. Watching content is honestly one of the absolute best things to do with virtual reality headsets. It's one of my favorite uses of my device. It's just to watch Netflix or Amazon Prime Video on the dedicated apps that exist in the Meta Quest store. It is literally like a portal that teleports you over to a cinema screen, and the viewing experience is honestly amazing. You feel like you're watching it in a cinema, but you're just sitting on your sofa in private, and it's absolutely incredible. This is one of the great benefits of VR that Meta seem to not put too much emphasis on, but actually is immediately understandable to a generalizable audience about why that would be an appealing thing. Why be limited to your 13-inch, 15-inch, or even 20+ inch monitor when you can have a cinema-sized screen in the form of a virtual reality headset? It is honestly a fantastic application of it. The problem at the moment with trying to watch content on a device like this one from Meta is that, well, the apps just don't work very well, especially the Amazon Prime app. It's extremely buggy, the experience isn't very good, and there's a certain amount of flicker in the screen that means that eye strain is honestly a real problem with this device. Now, I don't have my hands on an Apple Vision Pro yet, so I can't tell you what the watching experience is going to be like on that device, but certainly with the Quest device, there is a certain amount of eye strain that means that long viewing sessions, if you're trying to watch a movie, which is honestly what you want to be doing on a screen that size, it can sometimes be an uncomfortable experience. But when it comes to Apple, given their history and their expertise in the world of software and apps, I don't think that this will be a problem. I suspect that the app and the UI experience of watching content on an Apple device is going to be really seamless and enjoyable, and hopefully the hardware holds up so you don't have this screen flickering issue. And as a result of that, I think this could be an absolute game changer when it comes to people who want to just watch content on the biggest screen possible. This is the biggest screen possible that you can have. It's far bigger than any of those huge screens you see, over at Costco or anything like that. This is going to be the biggest screen guaranteed because it literally fills up your entire field of vision. And the second use case that Apple focused on heavily was productivity, and I think this is a really smart move. So productivity in virtual reality is theoretically a game changer because what you essentially have with a virtual reality headset is a multi-monitor setup, and this is something which is super important for being productive in today's society. Any of you who have used more than one monitor before knows that having multiple monitors is incredibly useful. And with a lot of people working from home or working on the move, it's really valuable to have a multi-monitor setup that you can take with you on the go. And essentially that is what the Apple Vision Pro is proposing as a value proposition to its customers. Here is a multi-monitor setup that you can take with you anywhere you want to work, whether it be at home, in a cafe, or in a tiny apartment. And that tiny apartment point is super relevant for a lot of people. If you have a desk job, that means you're primarily working on your laptop, chances are you live in a big city. Like me, I live in London, some people might live in New York or Tokyo or whatever. If you are living in a big city and you have this kind of desk job, the chances are is that you don't have a massive apartment. And if you want to have a multi-monitor setup, for a lot of people that just isn't feasible from a space perspective. A multi-monitor setup requires you to have a massive desk and a massive amount of space on that desk to fit multiple monitors onto it, and it's just not realistic for a lot of people. But if you can build that multi-monitor setup into a virtual reality headset, well, suddenly that's a massive space saver and an absolute game changer when it comes to productivity. And the nice thing about Apple's new headset is that it seems to work seamlessly with the new MacBook Pro. I haven't got my hands on it yet, so we can't say for sure, but from what they showed in their presentation, it looks like you simply put on the headset, you look at your MacBook Pro, it pairs automatically, and boom, suddenly this new headset becomes your monitor for your MacBook Pro, and your 15-inch or 13-inch MacBook Pro turns into a 20-inch multi-monitor setup. This is one of the absolute best use cases for a virtual reality headset, and something that I've been advocating for in the conferences that I've been speaking at, about how virtual reality goes from being a niche product for gamers and people who enjoy being a furry in VR chat to actually being a mainstream product that a lot of people are using. And Apple's focus on this aspect of virtual reality, I think, is really smart.
Predict what the tipping point will be in terms of the hardware. Like, when will we see, stuff like this being in everybody's homes and people using it on a daily basis? I would say it's not going to be because of gaming, which is where a lot of the space is being focused at the moment. It's going to be when this is basically the better version of your laptop, I think, is when it's going to really take off.
Now, to be fair to Meta, they did try to get into this space with this device, the Quest Pro, and they were arguing in the marketing for that device that this would also be a productivity powerhouse. And in theory, it worked amazing, because you simply put this headset on, it did work natively with the MacBook Pro as well, and suddenly you would also have this multi-monitor setup. But since I'm somebody who owns one, and I also own a MacBook Pro, and I tried it out, it just doesn't work very well. When you try to use this device with a MacBook Pro, you end up with a just terrible user experience. Firstly, the pairing is a little janky. You have to install this external app, and then you have to wait for it to connect and load, and it's just a lot of hassle if you're someone who wants to use this as a daily thing. Secondly, once you're actually in the software looks cheap, it looks bad, it looks like, Meta Horizon Worlds, because that's what it's actually based in. And then you immediately realize that you have a problem because you can't see your keyboard. When you want to use your headset as a multi-monitor setup, you also need to be able to see your keyboard and your mouse so that you can actually, do things with those monitors. So the way that you're supposed to get around this is to use what you call color pass-through. So that's when you're not in a virtual environment, but instead you're using the cameras on the outside of the device to paste your real environment into your virtual space so that you can actually see what's going on around you, including your keyboard and your mouse and whatever else is on your desk. The problem with this on the Quest Pro at the moment is that the color pass-through is, quite frankly, terrible. The way that the color pass-through works on the Quest Pro is that it has black and white cameras on the outside that paste a black and white environment around you, and then to try and make it a color pass-through, they then paste a layer of predicted colors over your black and white environment. And in theory, this should create a beautiful color pass-through experience, but in reality, it just looks terrible. The image is grainy, there's flicker, and so you get a headache if you just use it for more than 30 minutes. And what makes the flicker worse is that this layer of color that goes over the black and white environment doesn't render very cleanly and in real time, so you end up with, black and white and color flickering between the two pretty frequently on random objects in your environment, which just gives you a headache after a short time. So to try and avoid the headache and flickering problem, I would go into a full virtual environment where my entire environment is replaced with a virtual world. But then once you're in this virtual world, you then can't see your keyboard and mouse. And so the way that Meta try and overcome this is they paste a virtual keyboard over your real keyboard, and then also replace your real hands with virtual hands that show you typing on that keyboard. but it just doesn't work very well. The virtual keyboard doesn't map onto your real keyboard very cleanly, so then things are out of place, which just makes it pretty much completely unusable. The hands are really buggy because they're trying to pair with the controllers, but also the keyboard, so then your hands end up sort of teleporting between the keyboard and the controller, and it just is super annoying and doesn't really work very well. And then on top of that, there's this notification that pops up that says, hey, your controllers have fallen asleep because you're not using them, and so you get this big notification in the middle of the screen which you can't get rid of. And it's like, well, obviously I'm not using the controllers because I'm trying to use my MacBook keyboard, but then you have this big notification. So basically, the whole experience is unusable. It's completely unusable as a productivity app. So what excites me about this new Apple device is that the color pass-through seems to be a major focus for them. And if the color pass-through is as good as they are claiming, it should be a completely seamless experience of turning your MacBook keyboard and monitor into this multi-monitor setup. And if that's the case, then this is an absolute game changer for productivity. I think that a lot of people will see the benefit of using a headset like this with their existing MacBook setup, and that will take this device from being a niche gaming VR chat device into a mainstream productivity thing that will genuinely help a lot of people who have desk jobs like me be a lot more productive. And so in my opinion, Apple's focus on these two use cases, watching content and being productive, is extremely well placed in the market, because these are easy to understand use cases for this type of technology that people can appreciate immediately how it's better than the devices that they're currently using. A major gripe that I have with the way that Meta and Mark Zuckerberg have positioned the Metaverse is that they focus on these really niche use cases that people can't relate to. For example, they show these ads where somebody is like making a model car in 3D space, or they show a professor, flinging a 3D particle to one of their students. Like, how many people work with 3D models of stuff and then will benefit from this type of technology? It's like hardly anybody. So like, of course the device isn't going to sell well when those are the main use cases that you're advocating for. Whereas the general purpose use cases that most people can benefit from immediately and that actually work really well in virtual reality is stuff like having a big screen and having a multi-monitor setup. And Apple has focused heavily on those use cases, which I think is the perfect use for this technology. That being said though, you'll notice at the start of this video that I said that I think that Apple got almost everything right. And the reason why I say almost is because there are a couple of shortfalls that I think they hit when it came to unveiling this device. The first one is the idea of the 3D camera. The idea that you would wear this headset and then go to an event and be like filming people using the cameras on the front of the headset to film a 3D video or photo. The idea of people actually doing this in reality, I think, is close to zero. Nobody wants to be that person at an event wearing this thing in public, sort of filming people creepily like you're that robot from Rick and Morty.
I am not staring at you. I am a cyborg photographer. Just act natural. This is a candid shot.
Once you try and advocate for that kind of use case, you're back in kind of Google Glass territory. It's going to be a long time before people are walking around in public wearing these things, and that's just going to be like a normal thing that everyone's okay with. Really, the best use cases for this technology are going to be when you're home alone doing productivity tasks or watching content. That being said though, the idea of a 3D photo that you can relive through VR is really intriguing, but put the technology into an iPhone. It's much less weird to walk around with an iPhone and film people like this rather than walking around with this thing on your face all the time. So Apple, if you're watching this video for some reason, put this technology into an iPhone, and I think people will really enjoy filming stuff on their iPhone and then watching it back through the virtual reality headset, which will be an amazing, memory reliving experience. And of course, we can't talk about the new Apple headset without talking about the price tag. At $3,500 US, this is an expensive device, far more expensive than even one of these, which is currently the most expensive device that Meta make. So because it is so expensive, I don't think that it's going to have a huge amount of mass appeal for the general public. Even as an enthusiast, that $3,500 price tag gives me some apprehension to just go out and buy one as soon as it comes out. That's a lot of money to part with for anybody. That being said though, this first device is the Apple Vision Pro, and the fact that it has Pro in the name suggests that later down the line, Apple might be releasing a non-Pro version of this headset that you would predict would come in at a much more reasonable and affordable price. And that might be the device that ends up being the one that most people adopt. So all in all, I think that Apple have made a really good move with this first device. They focused on the use cases that are actually applicable to people, that are actually appealing to the general public. And if they can nail the software component, and Apple historically have always nailed the software of their devices, then I think that this will be an absolute game changer for virtual reality, and it'll open up the world of the metaverse once again to a lot of people. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. It's not about my usual topics of psychology and behavioral science, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. If you did, please give me a thumbs up down below. Leave me a comment letting me know what you think of Apple's new device, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.